Now, join with us.
It has been at least 6 months since I played a game that gave me that weirdly addictive sensation of running into a brick wall until it falls over. In fact, not since Black Myth Wukong launched in August last year have I been so relentlessly defeated as I was in this action RPG. The first Berserker Kazan takes not an insubstantial amount of gameplay cues from the Massacre genre, and it became available to owners of the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series and PC on the 27th of March 2025, with a brief period of early access prior to that. Developed by the makers of Dungeon Fighter Neopal, this game uses a cel-shaded art style that is very reminiscent of anime games. But make no mistake, this isn't trying to check a list of waifu boxes despite the addition of a pink-haired sidekick. This tale focuses on the titular Kazan, once a legendary general, who is branded a traitor by his kingdom. While being transported, he is rescued by a servant of the Lord of the Netherworld who seeks to possess his body. Kazan fights back, but begrudgingly reaches an agreement with the spirit where they cooperate and both get what they want. This dynamic is an obvious point of contention, but it's also the big plot reason why Kazan escapes death over and over. Our former soldier's motivations are quite simple: get revenge on those who betrayed him, while the spirit, known as the Phantom, is a servant of Charon, the Lord of the Netherworld, who has been sent to try and find out where there are leaks between the mortal realm and the Netherworld. The story is told through a mix of NPCs in the world spewing exposition, and through stills and cutscenes that detail some of the key moments. These are similar to those used in other games in this genre, and include some of the same canvas-style artwork to tell the story. These are often short and sweet, covering bits of the narrative where there's no fighting, and just need to catch the player up. Boss backstories are a focal point of these snippets, and often come after taking down one of the game's more humanoid end-of-level entities. The story is quite formulaic, and every mission ends with some sort of boss encounter. It's certainly not impressive in terms of a narrative, and the side character development missions feel very fragmented. Some of these are fleshed out via collectibles that can be found in the world, but none of these entities feel particularly engaging. This could be a combination of them being relatively static in the game world and in the hub, or maybe just because they're fleeting in their interactions with Kazan, who is very much the story's focal point. Story was never this type of game's big draw, and while simple, revenge is an easy enough motive to follow without needing to rely on complex plot devices and scheming to prop up the narrative. After a brief intro cutscene, the game's first level is quite a strong showing. There's an abundance of snow, a feeling of solitude while being surrounded by things that want to kill you, and at the end, there's a boss fight that ended my life multiple times. It's exactly what you needed for a starter level. In a sense of structure, the game is mission-based, with it giving you the option to return to the crevice between missions. This is your hub area, and provides all the usual functionality you need to crush your enemies, from a blacksmith to vendors and providers of optional quests. Kazan's gameplay uses a lot of the contemporary Massacre playbook. You recover at checkpoints throughout the level, and if you die, you return to one of them. You have main stats you can level up, like strength and vitality, and other resources you can use to enhance gear or reroll stats. You unlock shortcuts in the levels by kicking down ladders, unlocking doors, and moving carts, and you spend a resource that you drop upon your death to level up. This last element houses one of the most obvious mechanical changes. Upon dying in a boss encounter, you no longer have to re-enter the fight to reclaim your souls, echoes, or in this case, lacrima. These are dumped outside the boss arena, so whether you want to call it a quality of life or an easy mode, you can recover these without needing to run into a boss repeatedly. There's also something of a pity system for gamers who lock in and rush the boss over and over, and each time you die fighting one of these bosses, you are given a small amount of lacrima depending on how much progress you made in the fight. This isn't substantial enough to be worth farming efficiently, but it does help if you're that type of player who might get tunnel vision and forget they can go and farm something else and come back. Melee combat is where the first Berserker really shines, and I expect this game to draw comparisons to other games like Nioh and Wo Long Fallen Dynasty. In a sense, these are very accurate comparisons. Combat is purposeful and technical, while retaining a basic moveset that is simple to execute. Combat variety greatly depends on which of the three chosen weapons you decide to use, with the spear, dual wielding, and greatsword the available options. Each has a fairly wide range of moves, and universal skills, like shifting into phantom form and throwing a javelin, make you quite versatile. These movesets are more technical than you'd see in a mainline Dark Souls game, but there is less variety. Magic and spellcaster builds are not available to Kazan, but I never really felt like they were missing. I would always advocate for more types of weapons, but what is here works and works well. I chose to play most of the game using the Greatsword, which relies on charge attacks and perfect guards to chip away at your foe's stamina and health. Each level contains weaker trash mobs, and sometimes elite enemies that don't respawn unless you restart the mission. These are spread out in between traps and environmental tricks to catch you off guard and send you back to a checkpoint. I found the first Berserker to be more lenient with trying to kill you in non-combat ways than the usual Massacre game is. The traps also had very obvious giveaways. At a surface glance, it looks like a lot of quality of life or safety rail systems have been added that wouldn't normally be present in this type of game, such as it being quite hard to fall off a ledge. But the game really hits you hard everywhere else in return. Every single story boss is an absolutely brutal difficulty spike. Everyone's experience will be different, depending on skill and respective character builds, but I can confidently say that I didn't kill a single story boss in one attempt. These boss fights were absolute monster difficulty spikes, compared to the relative sauntering you do through the rest of the levels. This is one of the first games of this kind where I had to resort to using every attack item, bonus healing item, and every stamina boosting pill to squeeze out wins against bosses here. I'm only showing the first few of these in footage for spoiler reasons, but shortly after release a handful of these were nerfed. If you want my non-objective opinion, this was absolutely the right decision. It took me 60 hours to get all the achievements in the game, and a large amount of that time was retrying bosses over and over to get my first kill. Someone more naturally talented could easily run a sub 40 completionist run, but I have no problem admitting that the first Berserker Kazan is hard if you play on the normal difficulty, and only slightly less so if you use the summon just before boss rooms. I'm open to the fact that I might not be good at this game, but it's not a lack of reaction speed that kills you here. It's that good old Monster Hunter logic of knowing your foe and coming prepared for it. Sometimes you can only learn these by dying multiple times, and I would say that this game, more so than some other Massacre games, really walks a fine line between challenging and straight up difficult. On that note, let's talk about gear and general progression. Gear has rarity and rarer gear has more effects. The truly powerful pieces of gear are usually made from parts dropped by bosses and have set bonuses. Later on, sets provide additional skills or enhancements to existing ones and lean towards very specific playstyles, such as the set I'm wearing here, which boosts a specific attack called Mortal Blow. These sets are okay, but the ones that can make your character feel truly powerful aren't available until very late in the game, and I do wish that some of these started to become available a bit earlier, particularly as each mission has a cap on the level of gear it can drop, so this isn't exploitable in making your character overpowered early. The game essentially gates how powerful you can be before specific bosses, so skill is still the more defining factor than your gear in your early successes. Outside of pure functionality, the levels and environmental design fit a dystopian tone, but there's a lot of grey, dull colour. Almost every area in the game is set in some sort of destroyed or decaying town or castle, filled with corpses and demon monsters, and it does feel quite repetitive. Some more variety would be preferable, but this all fits within the game's intended atmosphere. It's just very boring by the end. That feeling isn't helped by the main missions being longer than you'd normally see in this type of game. Certainly these felt a lot longer than those in Wo Long and Nioh 2, and I feel like they could have been cut down by around a fifth and still created enough build up to the boss, yet felt more engaging in the moment-to-moment gameplay. Moving on to technicals, I'm playing on PC and didn't experience a crash or any game-breaking bugs. However, there was noticeable stuttering. This was similar to Black Myth Wukong, and occurs the first time an enemy uses a move you've not seen before, and results in a very noticeable freeze. I will say that this wasn't as bad or as frequent as Black Myth's was, but it does mean that the first time you fight a boss, this is painful beyond the boss's difficulty. This is an action game where I strongly believe you need at least 60 frames a second, and these moments are unfortunate blemishes on what is otherwise rock-solid performance. Graphically, I like the chosen art style for the characters, which is cel-shaded and takes a great deal of inspiration from anime. This is let down by very obvious low-resolution parts of armor sets that don't hold up if you play above 1080p. I can forgive this in the environments, but Kazan and his armor sets should have been a little more impressive. Finally, I am going to touch on sound design. The music follows the traditional Soulsy overtures, but I do like the audio cues in-game. When your enemies wind up for a big attack, the game gives you audio feedback that you can use to time your dodge or counter, and this is something I really came to appreciate towards the latter parts of the adventure. To draw a line under the first Berserker Kazan, I will say that this is perfect if you want a challenging experience. This is not a game that is designed to be a gentle introduction to the Massacre or Souls-like genre. This is a game made for veterans of that genre, and comes with a normal difficulty that reflects that. To set my objective opinion aside once more, this is a game I'm glad I played. I'm glad I finished it, and I'm glad I can put it down. I honestly don't know if I'd have had it in me to beat an even harder boss than this game's 3-phase final encounter, at least not without some serious lacrima grinding. Objectively, there are some up and downs here, but this is a really good example of a game that knew exactly what it wanted to do and went out and did it. For me, this is propped up by a low floor, high ceiling combat that feels good, and I'd be very interested in a sequel with a wider variety of weapons and a bit more environmental variety.